Can you talk a little bit about the role of these human rights organizations like Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International in manufacturing consent for these regime change operations?
Yeah, thanks for saying it because I struggle with that. Like I'm trying to like deprogram my brain, and I feel like that's one of those things where it's like, well,
Yeah, Greg
if
thinks
it's all
Human Rights
bullshit.
Watch is all good. So
No,
explain why that's not
I
the
honestly, I
case.
figure like at this point, I'm just like, it's a wild card. I just don't know what the hell I'm talking about. But like, I can identify with people who are like struggling with that, right? You see Amnesty International saying like, yeah, we've interviewed all these people directly, surveyed, hundreds of people. Where to Ryan's question again, please.
Well, Ryan does a really good job on Twitter of
He's
just,
Human Rights Watch watcher.
yeah, no, that's who will watch Human Rights Watch, which was founded actually as Helsinki Watch to take down the Soviet Union in the 1970s. There's actually a book, and I think it doesn't do justice to how monstrous these organizations can be, called Ideal Illusions by James Peck, but it's a good starting point if you have questions like, why did Ken Roth support the coup in Bolivia where there were monstrous human rights violations and indigenous people were being massacred for nonviolently protesting the removal of the elected president, the first indigenous president in South American history? Why did he support that? Why did he post a photo from The Economist of Evo Morales shooting himself in the face? I mean, what's going on there? And this book might help provide some background there. But basically, what is happening is that these human rights groups, the human rights industrial complex, is simply an outsourced force multiplier for the U.S. State Department and NATO. And Human Rights Watch has been run for the last 28 years by Ken Roth. He is dedicated his life to overthrowing the Communist Party of China and installing a white Chinese government that's friendly to the West, basically balkanizing China. He was regularly meeting with the Obama administration and the Obama State Department. He's just part of that world. His wife, Annie Sparrow, she poses as this public health expert, but she was participating directly in the Syrian proxy war, helping to spread phony allegations that the Syrian government was causing polio outbreaks and so on, when in fact, and she was working with a Saudi-funded medical front that was working exclusively in the insurgent-held areas. And the reality was these insurgent-held areas were such hellholes that medical workers couldn't get in to do vaccinations, and you were seeing diseases come to Syria that had never taken place before, or that the government had eradicated, including polio, which is scary. They're simply liars. I mean, Ken Roth yesterday was posting a mistranslation of Putin's response to Joe Biden. As the head of a human rights organization, he's trying to inflame conflict all the time. He supports regime change and sanctions in Nicaragua. He supports regime change and sanctions in Venezuela. Human Rights Watch ran a campaign for sanctioning Venezuela and supporting the Venezuelan opposition. Amnesty International has listed Leopoldo Lopez, the leader of these violent, racist Guarimba protests that saw the burning alive of Orlando Figuera, a black Afro-Venezuelan in the neighborhood, in the area that Leopoldo Lopez, where he served as mayor. He's listed as a prisoner of conscience by Amnesty International. No such listing is provided for Julian Assange or Chelsea Manning. And prior to that, Alexei Navalny was a prisoner of conscience. I think Lopez should be more controversial than Navalny. The head of Amnesty UK, Christian Benedict, is a full-time promoter of regime change in Syria. In 2016, Amnesty UK, along with the Daily Mirror and several other organizations, sponsored a rally for a no-fly zone in Syria. In other words, a rally to bomb Syria. What kind of human rights group holds a rally to bomb a sovereign country? Which Ken Roth supported the NATO campaign against Libya. Ken Roth has taken hush money from a Saudi billionaire to not talk about Saudi human rights abuses. This was reported, I think, in The Intercept. So it's not just about personnel, it's also about funding. Amnesty International is marginally better than Human Rights Watch because they do have a constituency that they answer to. Human Rights Watch basically has a constituency of one, and it's a figure that I'm not allowed to talk about without being called an anti-Semite. George Soros. He is a anti-communist hedge fund billionaire who was described by David Ignatius, the Washington Post correspondent and now columnist, in 1991 as part of a group of overt operators who, now that the Cold War was over, were doing what the CIA did in private, doing so publicly. Basically a CIA cutout, where U.S. intelligence will say, you fund this operation and, we'll hook you up. Soros is also he's a serious ideologue. Like, he really believes in, toppling all of these governments and installing liberal governments that support what he calls an open society. And that leads him to support the same military conquests and interventionist hybrid war campaigns that Ken Roth supports. But it's his money that sustains Human Rights Watch almost exclusively, and he calls the shots there. It's not like he's telling Ken Roth, like, I'm the puppet master, I need you to do this today, but he wants someone there who's completely on board with his agenda.
Right.
So